Hello there. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Earlscourt Streetcar. This was a streetcar line that existed in a sort of transitional period when passenger travel patterns hadn't fully adapted to the newly built subway line. So, without further ado, let's get into the video. The origins of the Earlscourt Streetcar can be found in the early 1900s with the Avenue Road Streetcar. I won't go into much detail about the Avenue Road Streetcar as I've already done so in my video about the Bay and DuPont streetcars, which you can find linked in the top corner and at the end of the video. Simply put, however, on December 26, 1921, the Avenue Road Streetcar was extended along St. Clair Avenue to what was then known as Caledonia Loop, which is today's Earlscourt Loop. The Avenue Road Streetcar would eventually become the Bay Streetcar, although its routing along St. Clair Avenue wouldn't change until March 30th, 1954. On March 30th, 1954, the Bay Streetcar would be abolished as a result of the opening of the Yonge subway. That same day, the Earlscourt Streetcar would begin operation. The Earlscourt Streetcar would generally operate between Earlscourt Loop and Mount Pleasant Loop. However, at some points, the Earlscourt would terminate at St. Clair Station, and service east of it to Eglinton Avenue would be handled by the St. Clair Streetcar. The reason for starting this service came down to passenger demand. Passenger demand along St. Clair Avenue was heaviest east of Lansdowne Road, so the TTC could get away with operating two streetcar routes along this part of the road. Prior to the opening of the subway, St. Clair Avenue was served by both the St. Clair Streetcar, which ran from Yonge Street to Keele Street, and the Bay Streetcar, which ran from downtown Toronto to Earlscourt Loop. Even after the subway opened, there was still demand for this supplemental service, which paralleled the St. Clair Streetcar. The first change in service for the Earlscourt Streetcar would come on March 30th, 1975, when it was cut back to St. Clair Station. Service east of St. Clair Station would be handled by the newly created Mount Pleasant Streetcar. The Mount Pleasant Streetcar, however, would be short-lived and was abolished after only 15 months of service. While the Mount Pleasant Streetcar was gone, neither the Earlscourt or St. Clair Streetcar would return to Mount Pleasant Road, with the TTC instead deciding to convert the former streetcar route into a trolleybus route. Over the years, traffic patterns along St. Clair Avenue were changing and passenger demand west of Lansdowne Road began to match that of the demand east of said road. The TTC would begin to focus more time and resources into the St. Clair Streetcar to combat the growing demand on the line, and as a result, the Earlscourt Streetcar would be cut back to a rush hour only service. Service on the Earlscourt Streetcar would come to an end in 1978, ending 24 years of service. The Earlscourt Streetcar would be merged with the St. Clair Streetcar and become the 512L Earlscourt. The 512L Earlscourt would operate from St. Clair West Station to Earlscourt Loop during rush hour only. Eventually, though, this branch of the St. Clair Streetcar would disappear and the Earlscourt Streetcar quietly faded from existence. The Earlscourt Streetcar is an interesting route in that it existed in a sort of transitional period. The period between pre-Subway Toronto and post-Subway Toronto. A time when travel patterns hadn't fully adapted to the subway and passenger movement through the central part of the city was still in flux. This transition period, however, was only going to be temporary as a new norm would eventually be created in regards to travel patterns. The Earlscourt Streetcar itself then was always going to be temporary. The Earlscourt Streetcar was designed to replace the service lost with the abolition of the Bay Streetcar, although only on St. Clair Avenue. And it is in this regard we see the reason the Earlscourt Streetcar was always going to fail. While the Bay Streetcar duplicated service on St. Clair, the difference was the Bay Streetcar would travel into downtown Toronto. The Bay Streetcar was in essence a commuter line ferrying passengers from what was at the time the northern fringes of the city into the city center. So, while the Bay Streetcar shared a portion of its route with the St. Clair Streetcar, it was to some extent catering to a different market, and thus the two routes could coexist. By comparison, the Earlscourt Streetcar duplicated the St. Clair Streetcar, and after service to Eglinton Avenue was cut, the Earlscourt Streetcar lost any sort of factor that could differentiate it from the St. Clair Streetcar and justify its existence. Once passenger traffic had shifted and adapted to the existence of the subway, there was simply no need to retain the Earlscourt Streetcar, as the St. Clair Streetcar already did everything the Earlscourt Streetcar did. Eliminating the Earlscourt Streetcar ultimately changed nothing, as it did nothing different from what was already provided by the St. Clair Streetcar. The Earlscourt Streetcar was a snapshot of a transitional time when passenger travel patterns hadn't fully adjusted to the existence of the subway. However, once the transition was made, there was no longer a need for the Earlscourt Streetcar, and the service it provided could and was already being provided by the St. Clair Streetcar. And with that, I will end this video here. Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it and want to see more like it, please hit that subscribe button because there are more videos like it on the channel and there are more videos like it on the way. If there's anything you want to say about the Earlscourt Streetcar, please don't be afraid to do so in the comments section down below. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.